Hello, hello, you beautiful stars. Ooh, bright light. Bright light. Oh, it's okay, Sammy. Just sleep. Hello, hello. Yes, I am using my blurry screen. I'm not trying to be intentional with that, ladies and gentlemen, you beautiful stars. Um, my electronics are having a very hard time lately holding charge, and or I'm just using them too much. Um, and so I had to go the old computer way. Hello, Miss Chloe. I see you in the chat. I had to go the old laptop here, which makes me blurry, but that is okay. I just finished up a lovely interview with Christy McKinley. It's going to air on Saturday night. And then when I got done, I went, oh, my iPad is very low on juice. And I tried charging it for about the 10 minutes that I had, and it doesn't have enough to make it all the way through. So that is why I am blurry and a little bit purple to you right now. And I'm hoping you can hear me and all is well with you. Um, oh, thank you, Chloe. She said it's all good. What I do appreciate doing it with a computer opposed to an iPad, but it's what I have that's better technology, is that I can actually follow the chat. With an iPad, I don't know if you guys know, it's like what you in the chat, it's like the line pops in and then goes away, pops in and goes away. Kind of like on InstaChat or whatever that might be. It kind of works the same. So I'm not able to catch all you beautiful beings as you are in the chat. So this normally, yes, is on Wednesdays. Today is Thursday. I don't like my schedule having to get messed up like that, but yesterday, the electric company had guys coming in and cutting all the tree branches away from all the wires. And it was very loud, it was a lot. I'm not going to lie. It was very hard on the dog and I. So, yes, Miss Chloe, I did see that. You sent yes, I did see that. Most definitely. Yay. So everybody knows, now would be the time to join us on Patreon. We are doing a lot of great stuff over there. And now would be the time. I will just throw that out there. Hello, Miss Anne. Yay. We're actually having a class on the 9th going over how we're going to begin to develop psychic abilities much better. Yes, as a group effort. I love it. I don't want to say too much on here. The link is not below currently because I jumped on a different computer. But if you're catching this on the flip side later in life, think about joining us on Patreon. It's $5 or $8. Not trying to break anybody's bank. I'm just trying to help people and help. If you help yourself, you help everyone. Oh, and as I say that, 2 cards jumped out. Unreal. This is wonderful. The first card that jumped out as I was saying that is, if you help yourself, you end up helping everyone. The first card is number 7, the crown chakra. The frequency of the crown chakra, the violet flower of life, supports our spiritual connection to the universe and our ability to transmute negative energy into light. And I do wish I could hold this up on a better camera. Maybe I'll hold these for when we see each other again. Ooh, this camera is getting worse and worse by the time we go. And hear me out. This was the second card that popped out. I mean, they popped out together. This is how it works. Your crown chakra, transmuting negative energy into light. The next card that came out was 44, universal love. Oh, I love it. The frequency of universal love activates the connection we feel to each other, to our planet, and to the whole of existence itself. Oh man, I am. Maybe I'll hold these cards off for when I also do either Friday or Sunday's show so you guys can really see them with my better camera. So very true. So very true. Um, and that's what everybody's doing over on Patreon. We're healing, we're growing, we're learning, we're expanding. It's an amazing place to be. Oh, beloveds, how are you? Like I said, electronics in my life have been difficult. I spoke to Lucky Stone 888 or Lucky Smith, however you want to know him as, this morning, and he said that we've been having awesome, amazing, intense solar flares the past few days. Today, not so much. Um, that I definitely been experiencing them, and electronics have been very wonky. And the reason I bring it up too is tonight I have a show that's going to air with Jamie Gray about belly dance, but it's so much more. Please know that there's a lot more to that art form, right? But as Jamie and I are recording that day, she must have cut out 4 separate times, and it was already 4 times of us trying to record that I just kind of kept rolling with it. Do know, I bring this up because I've mentioned it a few times. As people are coming in and realizing I'm here, I do kind of babble on my live shows for the first little while just so people can kind of join us. Is that a lot of people are very scared about AI, extremely scared, extremely scared. And I'm not at all worried about AI because I know the energy and power that us humans have when we connect to the natural, energies, the earth, great spirit, right? And even in our own right, I know the power that just an individual human has, and then coming together collectively. And what's interesting is so Jamie Gray, that you can meet tonight in that interview, she's training under me to be a Reiki teacher. And just this past weekend, before we recorded that Tuesday morning, so all weekend, Jamie and I were together, kind of co-teaching 2 days of nothing but energy, energy healing, energy work, talking a lot about energy, all his energy, and really in some great energy and getting and teaching people how to do exactly that. Build your energy, bring your energy out, all of it, right? Be that vessel for the cosmic energy to come through you to others. So we spent 2 days teaching that. And her with me, she's studying to be a teacher. And so by the time we got to electronics on Tuesday morning, I kid you not, these electronics could not keep up with Jamie and I's energy, even though she's 15 miles away from me location wise. Um, it just was not able to handle it. This is why I don't worry about AI because I know what we are as individuals and as a collective. So I don't worry about it. What I worry about more so is people's fears about it. You see what I'm saying? It's just another level of fear that, and unfortunately, when people, if people and when people become terrified of something, they end up giving their souls away. You know, um, the fear is a very tricky thing. So here at Stars of the Morning Light, we learn, grow, develop, change, transmute, all sorts of things as to learning how to be your own person and in your own power and in your own light. So, and today we're talking about Edgar. Oh, beautiful Edgar. Today we might not go as long because, like I said, typically this is supposed to be on a Wednesday. I'm recording live on a Thursday. My schedule is kind of wonky due to different aspects. I do want to put it out there for all you beloved beings that follow me here more regularly. Thank you. I love you. I appreciate you. April, because I'm leading into hosting that huge event. And if you listen to the video that I just recorded with Christy on Saturday night, you're going to understand more of my role when it means hosting that event. And the space I hold for people, the space and light and love I hold for everyone. So potentially hundreds of people. So in April, due to not just that event, but a whole bunch of other stuff, classes and whatnot, other smaller things going on, I will be here for everyone. The normalcy of my schedule might be we got to kind of go with the flexibility of what may happen. Because my schedule in April, I do believe I'll be able to balance things, but it might be, okay, I do it here instead of opposed to here because there's just a lot going on. Oh, thank you, Chloe. I think Chloe just said thank you for your service. It is very much like that. Hey, Miss Lori, I see you. I see you, my dear. It actually is. And it's turning out to be a lovely thing. Catch the video I did with Christy. I recorded with her less than 20 minutes ago. We just got done, and catch it on Saturday night. She's wonderful. Christy and I are actually more alike than we may even be aware of because we've seen each other in different pockets and passing. But I do know I'm a lot like Christy, and she's a beautiful soul. And towards the end of that, we really talk about the new earth energy market and the hopes of it and what goes on, and you'll understand as to why Chloe said even more of thank you for your service, Courtney, because it's service to humanity. As we've been talking with Edgar Cayce here, and lovely Miss Seeker of Truth, Shelley, I see you as well. Hello, good day. As we've been talking about, to just do a little review, there's a concept as we're reading in the Edgar Cayce on secrets of the universe and how to use them. This lovely old school book I have. I have a lot of old school books. I think that was published in like 1989. There was that concept of there's the known self, the one that goes to the grocery store, goes to work, answers the phone, does all the chores, does this, does that, hangs out at barbecues with people. The known self, who people generally know you as, and what you just carry yourself as, the known self. But this book has been referencing then the secret self, the soul self. They also refer to it as the psychic self, that aspect within you, that soul within you that you really have to tap into. And we've been covering that soul, that secret self of you, it came to this planet. It got in through the gates to get here because it actually has an ideal. And they're calling it ideal, which is closely related to your purpose. So that's to kind of talk about where we've been. We have been we're slowly going through some of his biography. And in the last video, or maybe in the first, I talked about how I will not read his biography word for word because of copyright stuff. I'm very sensitive to copyright stuff. So we cover a little bit of that, and then we go into some of the teachings with the secret self aspect. And as we go along, I share with you some of my journey, my life. The reason I do that is I am an Akashic reader, which that has started to somewhat change up for me. And I believe I spoke about that here in one of the last videos, but I'll speak about it again, maybe in a future video, not so much this one. Not just because it's because my life very much parallels in certain ways to Cayce. So when I speak about it, I can understand where his thought processes were, or the interactions, and how it can get complicated. There's going to be an aspect of what we might talk about today that will definitely be coming up as we further go into his biography, that gets complicated as far as beings, and how I can understand it because my life has been very similar to his. Maybe a bit more dramatic, maybe a bit more colorful in ways, but like we said, this is also 100 years forward. That was the point of a lot of this, is let's take his life and the stuff that Cayce goes through as an individual and bring it up 100 years, bring it forward, and what that would look like in today's world. So, and get all the life lessons of the do's and don'ts, and this is why this is, and this is how that happens along the way. So I believe Brandon's in here. Hello, darling. Good to see you. So that's how this happens, is we're kind of taking things in piecemeal, and I'm sharing a lot of myself with you, being very transparent, because I've gotten that request too many a times over. Courtney, tell your story. Tell, how is it that you can do these things? Or how is it that you know this stuff? How is it that you've healed greatly? And just getting the backstory, different faiths, different beliefs, different this, that I kind of, instead of just talking to you for 5 hours at a time about this is my story, I kind of decided to put it into the context of this, to bring Cayce into the 100 years forward, and also make him more relatable, because he is just a man. I think people tend to forget that, and to share some of myself. So there's a lot going on with the mix. I will tell you, years ago, my husband kind of went through a stint of learning a lot about Edgar Cayce. And to this day, he will hands down say, yeah, Courtney, it's kind of like, it's eerie how much Cayce's life and mine are very parallel in experiences wise. To the point that he's like, yeah, it's like, he finds it very, very kind of odd. And there's been a lot of people out there that I guess have said similar stuff, just in a different way. That's the best way I can put it. And no judgment to them. I want people to understand that I am not saying I'm the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce. Not at all. Not at all. There just are, I believe, certain similarities that end up happening, that produce a certain capability of the mind and the spirit of the heart, right? So yeah, I am not referring to myself in that way whatsoever, ladies and gentlemen, you beautiful stars. Oh, I was going to show you pictures of his family members, but I'm working on that old computer, so I'll hold off for that until the next week because you're not going to see the black and white photos as good on this computer as otherwise. Wow. So last week we left off really talking a lot about his dad and all the accidents that Cayce had, like by the age of 3. 2 of them big time in the age of 3. And I talked a lot about hello, Brad, I see you, my dear. Um, and I just was talking about you, sweetheart. You can back it up. My husband just popped in the chat. He's probably, I don't know what he's doing. I was referencing, Brad, that you find it like big time eerie and kind of like, whoa, you do have a lot with Edgar Cayce. You have a lot of similarities. So we were referencing more so how these accidents, when around that age of 3, which 3 is such a big age in just child development period, no matter who they are, right? But I was trying to emphasize that a lot of people solely talk about the pineal gland, right? They solely talk about that. When in my humble opinion, oh shoot, I can't even think the uh, pituitary gland is also, the two work so much together that for me, I think there's kind of a dance between the two that both of them have to be kind of shocked and kind of start that communication and dance to really in the way access the records. Now, do I think people can build and develop the ability? Yes. Hands down, I believe all humans can. But for those that it's more natural, like Edgar, something I do believe happened. And then, so I spoke about his accidents and I spoke about my accidents at those ages. And also then the environment that we were growing up in after these accidents or while these accidents were happening, and how his father, well, we can't say biological. I'm going to remind everybody about that here in a minute. How his dad, drunk womanizer, thought he was the hot shit in town, right? Issues with gambling to the point that, and also that weird stuff about he didn't do good as a farmer because if he stood still for long periods of time, no matter if he's in the field or on a road or just outside, snakes would try to start crawling up his pant leg, or if he put his hand on the ground, a snake would. Somehow snakes were very attracted to that man. I'm sure he probably did have some kind of maybe abilities, but because his father was Cayce, Edgar's grandfather, Tom, was so skilled in abilities, I'm sure Leslie was like, yep, I'm not going to do anything like my dad. I don't want to be a farmer. But he was a rebel without a cause, right? There's always one in the family. And he was the second son. Surely that would happen with those big families. The second son, oh yeah, everything's going to the first one anyways. I'll just do what I want to do. Right. A little bit of jealousy there. Well, so that's to try to catch everybody back up. Okay. Let's get to where we are now with all that stuff happened when Edgar was 3. I do want to say Edgar was born March of 1877, and Carrie, his mom, as they're living now in an apartment behind the general store that their family owned as well, and let Leslie kind of run the store. She was able to have kids again. She in 1878 had Anne or Annie, and then she just kept having kids. So Annie, Thomas, Ola, Mary, and Sarah. Okay. So there was a pack of kids running around as usual. And Carrie, his mom, so she's dealing with the kids, she's dealing with her husband's lifestyle choices, let's say, and she's also now having to also help with the general store. She's probably actually doing more in that general store than her husband because he just was that guy. He wanted to get all the quick fixes instead of working hard for it, let's say. So, due to children running around, helping with the store, taking care of the home life, dealing with whatever her husband's got going on, because oftentimes, he would be dragged home drunk or they would have to go get him, that kind of thing, right? Uh, she then asked Edgar's older cousin, so her nephew, the son of Edgar Sr. or Edgar so let's remember. So Thomas' grandfather. Firstborn was Edgar, I'm sorry. Thomas' grandfather. Firstborn was Edgar. Second son was Leslie. Leslie is supposedly the father of Edgar Cayce that we're talking about, who they called Edgar Jr., to make a distinction between young Edgar Jr. Cayce, the man that we adore and love, make a distinction between him and his uncle, which can happen. But I do want to point out that it was also reported that Edgar, the oldest brother, frequent the apartment a lot. And also, so Carrie asked Edgar Sr., her brother-in-law had kids, and asked one of the oldest nephews there to watch over her kids as she's doing stuff, right? He's 11 years old. His name was Edward. Sorry, that's where the Edward came into play. So he's like 11 years older. He's watching the kids. And they referenced, by the way, in quotations, Edward Cayce's cousin, Edgar Cayce Jr.'s cousin. They referenced him in quotations as the older brother. So now we can definitely, as we've gone along in the bio of Edgar, that yeah, let's just throw it out there and assume that Grandpa Tom, great man, had the eldest son, Edgar, then Leslie. Leslie marries a major, Carrie. That all sorts of disappointment. Remember, there was a bankruptcy and they lost all their land. Major disappointment. The eldest brother, Edgar, was visiting the apartment that they live in a lot, and they chose to name the first child that made it, because there was a death before that was suspicious of how that happened. Name him Edgar Jr. to make the distinction between the two. And then when Edward, the older cousin, is watching all these kids, they referred to him as Edgar Jr.'s older brother, in quotations. So we're just going to throw it out there. Everybody, it happens. It happens. If I was living that kind of life and now marriage, and of course you can't, divorce really isn't happening, right? It happens. We're no judgment here at Stars of the Morning Light. But I'm just making that very clear. So Edgar Jr., that we are talking about in all of this series, is also being taken care of his older cousin brother. And I know everybody just made a Kentucky joke. Let's not do that. It always happened. This was the turn of the century, keeping stuff in the farm. Things happen, loneliness gets involved, and life carries on. At least there's these beautiful people being made, right? Beautiful people being made. And let's take that into account too. If Edgar Sr., firstborn male from Tom, who had amazing gifts and used them appropriately, is actually the biological father of Edgar Jr., well, now we can have a bit more of an understanding as how gifts are also passed down the line, right? That oftentimes they do skip generations because they don't. I have not read anything that Edgar Sr., firstborn son of Thomas, had any gifts. But if Edgar Jr., who is being raised by Leslie, is actually biologically coming down the chute from Edgar Sr., well, oftentimes, and that's why I point this stuff out, because we talked about that. We got to pay attention to our family stories to find out it for your gifts that you will be most likely waking up to in the coming years. Where did they come from? How did they come down the pike? Where did they come from? So oftentimes, and people didn't know, it skips generations, especially if it's masculine. For some reason, more masculine skips generations than feminine. Feminine, it can kind of just keep coming and coming and coming. That's where we get the concepts of like witchy women, right? It just keeps coming down, and it's often, if it's in that line of women, I have seen that usually they have a girl first. And Carrie did have a girl first, but she died that night. Go back to the previous episodes, you can learn about that. But if it's in the male genes, it does tend to skip generations. So we're going to throw it out there that most likely, yes, Edgar Sr. is the biological father of Edgar Jr. that we are discussing throughout all of this. And in the middle there is his cousin brother who is now babysitting him. Yes. So, hello, beloved. Good to see you, my dear. So, okay. We got an older cousin watching a younger cousin, right? And many of you that are older, like Generation X and older, we can relate to this big time. I mean, cousins were taking care of cousins in my side a lot. And age appropriate for that varied, right? There was no problem with an 11-year-old taking care of a pack of kids back in my day. I will tell you that much. So that's happening. I wanted to make very clear. Yeah, family is doing its thing. So right next door to this general store, and you guys can all kind of picture in your mind, attached, detached, doesn't really matter, but think of just like, a small country street, the main street where general store, doctor's office, there's probably a bar, surrounded by a bunch of churches, that kind of thing, like the main street. So right next door to the general store was a doctor's office. Dr. Doolin, he's the one who birthed all of Carrie's children. Well, Carrie did the birthing. He administered and helped and, was a part of it. He was a doctor for that. He was the doctor for when Edgar had his accident that nail got driven straight through into his brain cavity. I mean, it was a thing we talked about last episode. He was the doctor that could run over and help with that. So he's right next door. And there's a reason why I'm bringing this up. I'm bringing these up too, so you guys all can see if you have characteristics that are similar in your childhood that are relatable to Cayce. Okay. So this doctor's right next door to their business. And of course, especially if he's the one that helped birthing your children, he's the one that helps when the kids have accidents that could potentially, deadly. He's your neighbor. So they would ask him to come over for dinner. I will tell you, he was very reluctant because he did not like children, which I get it. I do get it. Children are loud. They're children. We all understand children. And when you're maybe an older, sophisticated doctor, you just don't. Yeah, you spend your day with people, right? But he came to dinner, and they had the children sitting at the table, probably because it was only a 2-bedroom apartment. So of course, yeah, you're probably going to have the kids sitting there too with you. And the doctor sat with the kids. He didn't really want to, but he did. And Edgar Jr., little Edgar, 3, 4 years old right now, about 4 years old, was sitting next to him. And somehow Edgar impressed the doctor so much with just who he was as a child. Quiet, respectful, and we're going to go into this for a moment, that the doctor really took a shining. And he said that Edgar was the best, I have it in quotations, the best, most interesting child he had ever met. That the doctor, Dr. Doolin, started allowing Cayce, Edgar Jr., to come into his office and show him some stuff at a very, very young age, 4, 5, 6 years old. And this doctor actually gave Edgar his first nickname. Now, they did call him Eddie, which is standard. And Cayce liked that. But the doctor started calling him old man. Old man. This little kid. And everybody just started calling him that. You got to think, these are families interwoven. Mostly in the area, it's the Cayces and the Majors. So families interwoven, everybody talking. Cayce, as a child, is now being referred to as the old man because Dr. Doolin started calling him that. I bring this up because he was already showing the signs of, he was quiet. He could sit within himself and entertain himself. He could also sit amongst listening to the adults talk, male or female communication going on. He loved doing that, taking in adult stuff. He was very independent. But you also, as an adult, like how the doctor only took a shine to him, no other child, no other child. The doctor only took a shine to him, as in he knew he could trust that Cayce would be respectful to the equipment in his office. Respect the fact that some reason when you're explaining things to this child, it's as if he understood. As if, even though he is a child and he's taking it in as a child, that he is processing differently. Remember the different glands in the brain that I was alluding to before, that I believe the two end up working together. I want to make sure that I have all of this kind of settling into you guys, because I If you didn't see the last video, is what I was thinking about. If you didn't see the last video, sorry. Yeah. So even it says in the biography that a Dutch-born psychic back at this time, Peter Herkos, um, a, attributed the development of their psychic abilities to similar blows they suffered to the head, which they believe stimulated their pineal and their pituitary glands. Okay? Why I'm bringing this up is because remember, your pituitary gland is like back here. It is what takes in all the information that you are seeing and hearing. It is what's doing that. And it's what's then sending stuff to the subconscious, sending it up to the pineal gland. It's what's doing that, not the pineal gland. So that's why I'm trying to say the two work together. Okay. And this is another representation that when that gland is maybe working a bit differently than others, either an accident or maybe just from birth, right? That you're taking life in differently, hence why a mature, sophisticated doctor who does not like children refers to this young boy, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, as old man, because he can visibly see and speak with this child intellectually as if Cayce might be taking the information in differently. So that is an aspect to this that I'm not trying to say the pineal is not important. It's actually extremely important, right? It's that that's a bit of an element that people lose sight of. And for me, how I try, maybe without even them knowing, to develop that is from that observer stance. This is why in our Patreon, we're going to talk about observer nonstop. And we do a lot of healing and growth there. And we are practicing definitely the observer stance. Because do you know, once you start practicing that, it changes how we see, hear, take in the information. Therefore, we start rewiring the pituitary gland, which then can help the pineal gland ignite opening the crown. So even if people get information here from Stars of the Morning Light, there's reasons why I do what I do. I guess maybe through this Edgar Cayce study, you're going to realize, you're going to start to find out why I do what I do. Why does Courtney do what she does? Yes. So this old man concept, this name that now is on this little boy, Cayce, who can be very independent, and it's as if, okay, we're not going to worry about that one. That one's fine, right? It's interesting because the stories that they give here actually line up to something in my life. So let's jump 100 years later into what would that look like I grew up in the 80s. I'm an 80s baby. Well, yes, I'm an 80s baby. So we're going 100 years forward, right? I was also that child. Though I will tell you, because I had severe anger issues coming out the chute, as many of you have learned here, I had the nickname Not Old Man. As a small child like that, by 3 years old, they called me Bubba. You can all laugh. They called me Bubba because I would have this stance. If you could see my arms kind of out like this, hands on the hips, looking at everybody around like, who the heck are you? They they left it in the airs of, I approached every person, kind of like a bouncer outside of a bar, right? We're moving it 100 years forward. So my parents from the 60s and 70s were like, yeah, our child is like a bouncer. Who the heck are you? Um, but they also talked about, um, how I would stare at people as if I'm just staring right into the depths of their souls, since I was a baby all the way into my development years. I also was that child that would sit quietly with the adults around me. Um, my husband does find this part kind of wild because that is not the norm. Um, I was that child that, even if my parents were having a good time with their extracurricular activities, let's say, as we might have done in the 70s, right? Even if they were doing that, I was that child sitting around all these adults at a very, very toddler age and into childhood, and none of them mind, because I would sit quietly, and or when I did open my mouth, it would be a question that was very much smarter than my years, and or some kind of insight as to the conversation. Never did they mind, nor did my parents kind of understanding my energy. And my mom had done my astrology chart when I was born. They very much understood, do not speak to this child like she's a child. Speak to this child like she's an adult. Um, which they spoke to all of my, they insisted all of my teachers would do that. All the adults in my family or in my sphere, teachers, doctors, everybody, they would, before any kind of situation, they would say, speak to her, Courtney, speak to my child as an adult, because they could tell, and especially doing my chart, that I am taking in things differently. Now, I will tell you, and Cayce, maybe as we go along, this will kind of come into play a little bit as well. Socially with other children, not so easy. Not so easy, especially if there's also brokenness in the home or things that, like, Edgar might have been working through, right? Because of who his dad was in life. Um, and if you are gifted, and now the kids might call you a weirdo, lots of aspects of that, and just taking things in differently than your peers. So as I guess speaking for myself, in relation to him, this is why he and his brother cousin, quotations, they actually became very close. But Edward, his brother cousin, was like 10 years older than him. So, same with me. I gravitated to much older friends, much older people to hang out with, um, along with hanging out with the adults. Because the children my age, I didn't get them, honestly, and I'll say it to this day. That's why I kind of understood the doctor here, because um, I didn't get them. I just didn't get kids. I kind of still don't get kids, because for me, it's like, why don't you know this? And that's the difficult part, is when you're taking things in at maybe a heightened level through your pituitary gland. Um, and I will say I was tested as a child. Lots of testing that might come up in another episode, but testing that actually ended up going way too far, that my parents, once they found out, put a stop to it, because they did start testing me for this sort of thing, and I was only like 8 or 9 years old. The school system did, but yet doctors from Chicago were coming in. Yeah. So once they found that out, they shut it down. But it was because somehow in my test results that they first started, I had a comprehension level, especially verbal comprehension, communicating. I was registering 60% higher than the average person and the average adult. So how does that happen? Well, because how I'm taking in everything that I'm seeing and hearing is going through a pituitary gland that has been very much activated. I'm seeing and hearing, especially if it's verbal, different 60% higher comprehension, psychic abilities at that age. So, very, very similar in I was that child that could spend hours to themselves. Hours to themselves. I can still spend hours to myself. Very much. Now, there are others that do that as well. A lot of empaths, a lot of introverts definitely have to spend hours to themselves to diffuse, get rid of all the outside energies, right? Um, so look for the similarities, is what I'm saying, folks. Look for the similarities. One of the stories that's also very similar, they talked about wanting to talk more about Edgar's independence of basically being an adult in a child, which happens, basically being that adult just in a child body. Edgar got to go to the circus. The circus came to town, and you got to think, turn of the century. Ooh, circus, huge, great, awesome. His father did not want to shut down the store too early to go to the circus, so the man who is probably Edgar's biological father, his uncle, Edgar, took the kids. I do gotta giggle because it's like so much of this stuff is like, Leslie was like, yeah, take your child to the zoo, to the circus. Like, I know what's happening here. Jeez. Um, so Leslie uh didn't want to shut down the store early that day to go to the circus. So Edgar's father uncle took all the kids. Um, and I understand that because if the circus comes into town, that's your time to sell stuff, right? Like all the people that are traveling into town to go to the circus. No, you keep that store open. We do that in today's world. Um, and the parents, Carrie and Leslie, said, we'll meet up with you guys later. We'll just grab the kids later this evening from the circus from you. So everybody's at the circus having a great time. Well, Leslie and Carrie show up, and apparently Edgar saw them. Little Edgar Jr. saw them, and it was like, hey, I see my mom and dad, I'll go meet up with them. Is that okay? As the other kids are kind of sitting there watching the show, and his father uncle is there to, watching over, he turns to him and says, may I go? Like, I see my folks, can I go get them? And he says, yeah, sure. Well, Edgar never made it to go see his folks. Leslie and Carrie finally saw his brother, Edgar Sr., and was like, where's my son? Here's all the other kids. Where's my son? You lost my son? It's not even his son. And they formed a search party. Like they were like, oh goodness, okay, an adult watched the younger kids, older kids, go look for Edgar. The rest of us, we're going to look for Edgar. They're all looking for Edgar. They found Edgar like a bit outside-ish of what would be the circus, standing there talking with a neighbor. Most likely a distant family member, because the whole areas, the Cayces are the majors. But it's because Cayce started talking with them at like adult conversation, talking with this neighbor, what's going on with you? How are you doing? Getting very sincere and deep with this neighbor that he ended up just kind of exiting out while talking with them. And they're standing there where the cars would be talking. I believe, was like 4 years old, having this full blown adult conversation, very concerned and wanting to know how is this person genuinely doing, to the point that they couldn't find him. They found him. Obviously, we know the story. He's merely just walking off and talking with a neighbor as an adult being would do, and feeling perfectly fine doing so, not thinking, oh, I'm a child, I need to stay close to the adults, not thinking that whatsoever. Hence, even more so, his independence. That thought as a child of, yeah, I'm just going to do what I do. There was no having to develop survival skills or don't touch that hot stove. It was already there. Already there. And like myself, very much so. My parents did not worry at all about what I did. And by the time my parents had split up and my mom's working 2, 3 jobs, my sister's working a job because she was much older and also running track. And I'm the one making dinner by the time I'm 8, 9 years old to feed everybody and taking care of the household and making sure things are going, which is not uncommon with the actual Gen Xers. Not uncommon, and not uncommon with the kids at the turn of the century. More uncommon with the fact that Edgar was like a 4-year-old. Very much though, I have many, many instances of just that. Picking up on an adult around me probably needs to express themselves. And so I'm here sincerely wondering how you're doing. A lot of adult information, and also that adult, for some reason, feeling comfortable that they can share it with a child. I will tell you right now, though, in all of my personal experience, this is not every child, and we should not bring children into adult experiences or adult habits and behaviors until they are ready. I do not believe that. This is the uniqueness of Edgar Cayce. This is the uniqueness of when the pineal gland has shifted and is operating differently, in my humble opinion. Other children, no, we do not bring them into anything that is adult related. Period. Period. Let them be kids. I too at a circus, I too at the circus, my parents lost me. After we were under the tent, under the big top, I was with my mom was, I don't know. I think there were more kids with us. So she was handling more kids, probably my cousins, as how his story would handle. And my dad was actually kind of talking to, the carnies and drinking a beer with them and smoking a cigarette, just shooting the shit. It was back when people still did that. Okay. And I just walked away. I just walked away because not having the thought of I'm tethered to my parents, not having the thought that I have to stick around, because why? I'm fine. I can take care of myself. Everything is fine here. I walked away because my concern was not a fellow human. It was the baby elephant. I saw the baby elephant during the performance and knew that baby elephant should have a better life. And so I actually walked away from my mother, kind of stood by my father for a moment, And went, yeah, I need to go check on that elephant because I saw the cage from the corner of my eye. I'm 3 years old, by the way. Walked away from my dad, walked right over to the cage, and was like talking to the baby elephant through the cage and trying to tell this baby elephant, I might be able to convince them to let you come home with me. And if I am able to convince that, I will take care of you because you need a good environment to live in. Like I'm having this full blown conversation with this beautiful being of an elephant. Elephants are still very sacred to me. So, I mean, I knew, and we all know the energy now as an adult of elephants. So we also know the energy that I was probably getting off of that elephant and going, yes, that's who needs help right now. That's who needs me to communicate with and tell them that they're going to be okay and safe and send them love. Hence, just like how Cayce ended up walking out of the circus, talking to somebody, an adult, in kind of the same manner. Once again, Courtney's lost, and so the family, oh, we got to find Courtney. We got to find Courtney because nobody noticed until when whatnot. I mean, they're like literally starting to pack up, and then it's like, where the hell's Courtney? Because they got so accustomed to, well, let Courtney just do Courtney, which is awesome. I needed that. I needed that space and freedom. That once they found me, I mean, I was still talking to this elephant, and I was trying my damnedest in all logic and all reason and all adult communication that a 3-year-old could do to convince these people that this elephant needed to come home with me for its growth and safety and love. And I mean, I worked really hard on this argument. I have a faint memory of, I mean, I was working very hard with all the logic that I could come up with as to why that baby elephant needed to come home with me. Um, of course, that did not happen. I did not raise an elephant as a child, but I mean, I was given all the logic. We had a big enough backyard. I mean, all sorts of logic, to the point that my dad was very entertained. And then he just kind of had to end it with, you're not taking this elephant home with you, kid. It's not happening. We got to go. But he was very entertained with all of my logic and reasoning and effort and willingness to take care of this elephant, and him then asking questions. You know how big they get? Oh yeah, they get real big. I saw the big one. Okay, are you going to be able to wash that elephant? How big it? Yeah, of course. My folks engaged with me that way. All right, she thinks logically this can happen. Let's get as deep as we can to see how far she can take it. So until they just have to cut, I had to be like, no, 3-year-old, we're not bringing home an elephant. That kind of thing happened also with Edgar. So he got it from the doctor who ended up spending a lot of time with Edgar, having that kind of conversation, because now this 3-year-old, this 4-year-old, this 5-year-old is using logic, reason, higher train of thinking than the typical. The adults around didn't mind Edgar sitting there. Not at all. And it wasn't even one of those aspects of, just sit, and not be seen, not be heard. No, they didn't mind. All of those are attributed to him then be calling, he's called the old man. It develops because they're still children. I was still a child. Edgar's still a child. It develops a relationship with society and yourself that is different than the norm. That the layers of it there, as we move along in this biography of Edgar, this had to be addressed because it very much develops who someone is in many ways. And so do know that. And if you have similarities to this, because it makes it very difficult to understand your peers. It makes it very difficult to, if you are raised in an environment like that of independence and no one's worrying about you taking care of you and aspects like that, then when you get into a structured environment like a school, very difficult, very difficult when they have a lot of rules and you're used to living your life without that because people just trust that you have more awareness. So it does start shaping and forming how that person grows into their adult self. And relationship building, very, very complicated over the time. So am I missing something in the chat? I think I might be missing something. But have a good time. I'm glad you guys might be having a good time. Hi, Samson. No, not yet. Go down. Mama loves you. Down. See? The kid always interrupting me. He's a higher level being too. He understands. So let's get into our book. Let's get into where we were with Edgar Cayce on the secrets of universe and how to use them in your life. Excellent. Oh man, I love you guys. I love everybody in the chat right now. So much fun to be had at Stars of the Morning Light. So much love, acceptance, very intelligent beings. And you know what? It is that. Don't take life so seriously because then you're going to lose the point if you do. Man, we chose to come here to have a good time. I tend to try to remind myself of that always. Yes, have a good time, folks. That's what it's all about. If we take it too seriously, we forget why we came. All right. So, in this book, as I stated at the beginning, no, you have to give me a little bit longer. I love you in just a minute. He's trying to say hello to everybody. He really is trying to, whatever he's trying to do. We haven't eaten lunch yet. He's like, where's lunch and Lele time with mommy? Oh, so I apologize for the, see, about to Lele. Yep, you Lele, Sammy. Good boy, thank you. We left last time. We're still talking about that ideal and like, how do we make this happen? And so I'm going to read just a little bit of like the last where we were at, and then I'm just going to finish up that section, this little section, because this book is it's kind of written interestingly. They open up a topic and then they break that topic down into chunks. So it's not really chapter by chapter. It's kind of small essays by small essays in chapters. It's an interesting format as to how it's laid out. So we are in guidance through discovery of secret self. And remember at the beginning of this part, it asks for you to kind of get quiet with yourself, write these questions out. What did I come here to do? Why do I need to do that? How do I go about doing it? And a lot of at the beginning here, it talked about as you're breathing in, ask yourself that question. What did I come here to do? Pause your breath and start writing in that pause as you exhale, because that pause stops whatever the subconscious might throw out or what the ego might throw out. And it brings you to that sacred, secret psychic soul self, right? So that pause and that breath is where you would start writing out your answer. We covered that in one of the last videos. So where we are with it now is we're in here talking about selfishness more. And I like how they've covered selfishness so far. They do reference more of the Bible or Christianity here, but in a very aware, higher state of consciousness way. And they also, in a lot of their many ways of discussing and describing selfishness, to me, honestly, it looked like different forms of what we call codependency in today's world. And as we know, it's psychology is now saying, at least 99% of all humans walking the planet has some form or degree of codependent thought patterns and behaviors. So when they're talking about the selfish stuff here, it was they were using a lot of terms and a lot of adjectives, let's say, descriptor words that are now intermixed with codependent material that you might read. Because this was written in 1989. Codependency was just, the surface was not even being hit. Yeah. So for me, that's how I interpreted a lot of it. But as we continue on, I just, you guys are having a lot of fun. Oh my goodness, I love it. I'm going to keep going. But so anybody who's watching this later, it's because you can always watch the chat and listen to me even after this airs, is there for you later on, because it's a good time. Stars of the Morning Light is definitely a fun place to be. So we're talking about that. So I'm going to back it up just a couple of lines. Excuse me. And they were talking about how all of us are mirrors to each other. Not a new concept for us now. In 1989, people were still, it's not a new concept at all. The Vista was talking about it. I mean, this is not anything new, but it was still like kind of being absorbed by people like, huh? So they're talking about the mirror aspect of ourselves to each other. If you can see it in someone else, that means you have it in yourself. For we are nothing if not mirrors of the secret self for one another. If you can also see it, if I'm selfish. So we actually can see our secret selves with this mirror concept. We also know our known selves by it, and also selfishness, which I will tell you, will refer to just the root of all evil, evil itself, selfishness. Okay? You can also see it if I'm selfish. Again, I am mirroring you. Maybe my actions serve as a bad example. Don't hate me for showing you you. If you judge me, you judge yourself. If I threaten you, make you uncomfortable, shake your status quo, I'm probably unintentionally doing you a favor by giving you a chance to know yourself better. Now, we are all intelligent beings here. This does not need much explanation because I know we all understand this. It's just kind of crappy when we are going through it and then we realize, oh, that person's being a mirror. Oh, got to work on myself, right? It's not comfortable. It's not comfortable. When you begin to know your secret self's ideal, you can see the ideal your known self has been serving. If you can see it, you can change it. Whoa. Okay, we're going to keep going. Boldly saying, when you can start actually taking that pause of the breath, tap into that secret self, start obtaining what is the ideal of my soul, my secret, my psychic, my sacred self. Then, as they just said, you can see the ideal your known self has been serving. If you can see it, you can change it. I'm going to keep going. If some area of your life isn't working, admit to yourself that the ideal you have been serving is some variation on the theme of selfishness. All selfishness is a type of sin. All evil is a type of selfishness. All selfishness is sinful and evil. When the Bible talks about sin and evil, it's referring to selfishness. For all, this is in quotations, quoting the Bible, for all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. We've all heard that. Many of us have. Means all have been selfish at one time or another. The secret self is the spiritual level of self. But there are two other levels, the physical and the mental. Ideals operate at all three levels. Oh my goodness, before we go on, okay. I wanted to say, with that reference to the Bible, I will say I do use a mantra many times that kind of came from the Bible, but for those who might know the story, when Christ says, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do," many years ago I started saying, "Forgive us, for we know not what we do." Forgive us. Because I was very much understanding that mirror concept. I was very much understanding that by saying them, I was creating some kind of separation, as if I've never been selfish in my life, as if I've never messed up, right? I was very much aware of us humans, no separation, forgive us. I forgive you, you forgive me. The greatness of the Great Spirit forgives the all, right? Forgive us, for we know not what we do. I want to put that back in there because it very much does help when that mirror is presented to you to remind you there is no actual separation. They're just as fallible and messed up as you are. Maybe it looks a little bit different, right? That's why as we grow, they grow. As they grow, we grow. We're all walking this awakening together, but just as individuals, and it's lovely. But I also want to say, so they're also now going to point out that sacred psychic secret self, there's layers. I call it the pyramid, the pyramid of self ascension, mental, physical, and spiritual, mental, physical, and spiritual. And to make your pyramid sound and healthy and balanced and full, right? So nothing crumbles. It takes those, as they call, layers. So, finding my spot again. The secret self is the spiritual level of self. But there are two other levels, the physical and the mental. Ideals operate at all three levels. Ideals motivate. We serve the motivator. For instance, If money motivates, we serve the ideal of money. If power motivates, we serve the ideal of power. If success motivates, we serve the ideal of success. Now, money, power, and success are fine as results, but as motivators, they can be selfish. We're going to have to remember all of this as we go through Cayce's bio, by the way. If your secret self desires money, power, and success so you can make the world a better place, then money, power, and success aren't your motivators. Service is. And only you know which is which. This is going to come up in his bio big time. It really is. So just remember that those who are striving to power, money, success, we got to ask them what's their motivator. We should be asking all of our politicians this. We should be asking everyone that. What is your actual motivator then? If it's in service, so you, like Cayce, could open clinics, could do readings for people freely. That is the actual motivator. That is an ideal of service. If the result is the power, success, and money to do so, that's perfectly well and good. We are going to have to remember this, folks, because it will come up a lot. So that's what we should be asking people. What's the motivation? What is the motivator? You can ask yourself those questions. And your motivator is attached to your ideal. Your ideal is attached to the reason why you came, why you're here. And only you know which is which. Selfishness exacts a price physically, mentally, and spiritually. To illustrate. So, okay, they're going to kind of go into what I call your pyramid of ascension. Physically, serving the ideal of gluttony could be costing your health as well as your happiness. So that's if your ideal is gluttony. Mentally, serving the ideal of reason could be costing you peace of mind. For the intellectualizing just won't account for much of what life is about. And I will point out, guys, we have to be cautious of that in 2023. I love reason. Reason is the most beautiful. I love it. It's great. But it doesn't leave too much room for all of the beauty of the gray areas of life and enjoyment of life. Spiritually, serving the ideal of man-made theology could be costing you soul development. Your soul could be sleeping through all those sermons. And I do want to point out earlier when I was reading this to myself to be like, double checking where we were at, I accidentally read it like this. Spirituality serving the ideal of man-made technology could be costing you soul development. That was a trick of my eyes. And then I went, whoa, what? And then I read, oh, man-made theology. Then you might just be sitting in those sermons, wasting potential of actual spiritual growth. And then I had to sit for a minute with myself and go, wow, that was a trick of the eyes. Do I need to look at that? That my spirituality that is serving the ideal of man-made technology could be costing my soul development. Hence, again, a lot of 2023. Because I will tell you, anything that your mind is focused on is also what you're serving. Man-made technology, I will not be focusing on any of that really because it's not serving my soul development. Being unselfish helps on all three levels. On the physical level, serving the ideal of well being instead of gluttony, of well being, could restore or maintain health by making you diligently practice healthy habits. And I apologize, I believe a leaf blower is happening. If you can hear that, I apologize. On the mental level, serving the ideal of faith could clear up mental confusion about why the world seems so complex. So, on the mental, instead of serving so much reason and add a little bit more faith, it releases you from trying to figure out why there's so much complex in the world. On the spiritual level, serving the ideal of courage could enable you to find more personal relationship with your God. And then I have to say, it was interesting that I interchanged spiritual when they said man-made theology into courage of spending more time with God. And I think that is still there with how my mind kind of made it man-made technology. If I had a little bit more courage to let go and not worry about it, I could develop my personal relationship with God more. Bringing it up 100 years later, bringing it to the 100-year later. Now, of course, the book I'm reading from is from 1989, but what it really is they all compiled Edgar's readings and then categorized them, and this lovely author put them into some kind of readable format. So this is really still me trying to bring Edgar's messages 100 years forward. Is everybody still hanging in there? All right, good. Thank you. We're almost getting through. So, by consciously replacing gluttony, reason, and man-made theology with well-being, faith, and courage, I apologize. You do not stop eating, thinking, or attending church. Instead, you eat, think, and attend services with a different purpose. You begin to view things with a new perspective, but the new perspective must be accompanied with different actions. I apologize. It's been a lot of talking today. Cheers, beloved. I love what you just put in the chat there. For instance, adopting a physical ideal of well-being means you stop giving in to self-indulgent impulses of the moment and you start selecting better food. This requires time and effort. It means you spend time working out and sleeping. It means you allow yourself to play, to read, to listen to music, or whatever else contributes to your sense of well-being. Action. Adopting a mental ideal of faith means you give up worrying. Worrying, give it up, let it go. You no longer spend time in fruitless conversational exchanges with fellow intellectuals in the pursuit of sanity. Instead, you identify one area of this complex world where you can do some good and volunteer to do it. You release emotional attachments to scholarship and begin to live your way into true understanding. I wish more people would understand that. Let go of a lot of the worry because you're not going to figure it all out. None of us will. Let go of trying to find all the truth and what is it really, and going through all the complexities of this world, and latch on to something you really care about. Latch on to something that you want to see a change and a good happen there, and start doing the action in that movement, that service, what have you. And then you will truly understand it even more so. Adopting a spiritual ideal of courage means you dare to ask questions. It means you no longer accept what is told without researching it for yourself. You give to the quest time and energy because you dare to risk learning. That's for the spiritual part, the inner part. And this was written in 1989, where many people were still, well, no, you're not allowed to read the Bible. Only the priest or the pastor can. Or you're not allowed to do this. Or teachings only go so far or so deep. Yeah. And also remember, too, around this time, there was kind of that New Age movement came in and started to very much want to market, put a lot of money on workshops and this class and do this and do that. I mean, New Age in the early 90s, it was like, wow, somebody's making a lot of money. Remember all the infomercials? I mean, come on. That they are also saying, question, be in communion with God yourself. Question things and be. When it comes to the mental, start doing. Just find something that mentally you feel good about, you want to participate in life and work towards it. Faith-wise, be with your own secret, sacred self in communion with the Creator. It's lovely. And I do find it interesting when this book was written, because many people in this chat right now, you guys were there. You remember that thing at their late 80s, turn of the 90s. It was like, wow, New Age. Somebody's making a lot of money. And I do want to say that's starting to, it comes around, and again, it's that turn of the century. Same as with Edgar Cayce. This is what we talked a lot about at the very, very first episode before I was even going into any books. Now, what goes on energetically in spiritual movements at every turn of 100 years, his was the spiritualist. Those that were like, oh, I'm going to profit off of this. Then I'm going to be debunking this. Those heightened awareness of the gifts that they have, all of this was happening. And we are still in that turn. I mean, 1985, 1995, 2005. I mean, that's all of the few decades, lifetimes, right? So a lifespan around a turn of a century, right, is what we're focused on here. There's all that complexity. There's all sorts of complexity within the spirituality stuff. It's very fascinating. And you can go even further back in history. Go to every turn of a century and look at the 100-year kind of movement around it. That a lifespan, 80 years or so around it, and just go, whoa, look at it. Before that, you had the romantics and transcendentalism. Guys, it happens, and we're in it again. It just happens. And it's good. It's for more and more beautiful souls to identify with their ideal. Ooh, adopting a spiritual ideal of courage means you dare to ask questions. It means you no longer accept what is told without researching it for yourself. You give to the quest time and energy because you dare risk learning. These are examples of how actions affect thinking and feeling. Of course, a degree of thinking precedes any action, but it is a mistake to wait until you feel spiritually strong and courageous before asking questions. And or I will say doing any action. Start into action, whatever that action may be. I'm going to finish reading this and I am going to probably talk about action for a moment. And it's silly to think any degree of well-being can be achieved while you are still practicing gluttony. Understanding follows doing rather than intellectualizing. I'm going to read that again. Understanding follows doing rather than intellectualizing. You can't learn to play a piano by talking about it. And you can't receive soul guidance for selfish purposes. Trying to use soul power to harm another is to commit soul suicide. Your soul will be tortured if you misuse its power. It will withdraw, maybe even banish itself. Your secret self longs to glorify its creator. It cries when separated from the Father's love. It aches to return home. It knows the way home it is to fulfill its mission. Don't delay your secret self's life. So I want to talk just for a minute about action, because I guess I don't use that word enough. I really don't. Action is the key, because I tend to use the word experience. But experience only comes via some forms of action. Really. So, as they just said, understanding follows doing rather than intellectualizing. That is the same here at Stars of the Morning Light when we say knowledge, intellectualizing, knowledge, plus experience, action equals understanding. And the more those two keep adding and adding, more knowledge plus experience, more understanding, more knowledge, more experience, more understanding. The amount of your understanding is really where the wisdom lies. So sitting around intellectualizing, listening to everything and reading, that is beautiful and wonderful. Have those conversations with self and others. But there's got to be action. There's got to be action, guys. There has to be. For true, full understanding that heightens your wisdom. That action there can be volunteering. That action can just be, okay, today I'm going to eat better than I did before. Action can be very simple. Today I'm going to go for a simple walk. I'm not going to try to run 5K. I'm going to do a simple walk. Whatever that might be, to establish and keep and maintain your pyramid, mental, physical, and spiritual, healthy. And what's interesting, I guess I never paid attention a lot to the word action, yet in my formal education of creative writing, that's what they focus on a lot. They say get right to the action, right to the action. Like if you're studying how to write fiction, It is start with the action. Where's the action? We want more action. Action in written form, right? That is what I was told and taught my 4 years of education with that. And there's a reason for that because the action then presents the energy. The action presents the energy. If it's in my writing or other people's writing, it's what moves that story. Not all that inner dialogue stuff, not communication. It's what moves the story. And it's the same thing that moves our stories. It's what moves the story of self. And in those small little actions that you can take, you start being able to find your ideal by what is really motivating me here, by spending time with yourself in that action or post action. What did I get from that action? Action is so important for moving the energy that is within you and connected to everything else. So please remember that. It's a part of the equation, the mathematical equation if you need to, knowledge plus experience, the action equals understanding, which can lead to wisdom over and over again. It's a part of that, and it's a part of getting that energy going of a new ideal, connecting with self, a new life in small ways. And once energy starts and it's going and it's going and it's going, energy and motion stays in motion. Something has to stop that propulsion. Something has to stop it. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. So if there is something you're gravitating towards, there is something that you're, as we say, let go of a lot of the worries and just focus on what is driving you, that you are motivated by. If you're doing that and thinking that, and you start small with the action, allow the energy then to unfold because that is your story. We talk about Edgar Cayce going to the records and reading the Akashic and communicating with all of that. That is it. That's your story. You're writing it every day. Every day you're writing your story. Nothing is set in stone. And action is a part of it. So I love you all so much. You are such the most beautiful beings. You are lovely stars. Thank you for dealing with my blue screen here on my old technology. And I will, oh my goodness, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Normally this is on Wednesday live at 2 p.m. Today is not Wednesday, folks. I had to change things around. If you like what you hear, please share it. Give me a thumbs up to let me know that you enjoyed it. Put comments below. I really do read the comments. And oh, you beloved beings, I will see you tomorrow at 11 a.m. on Fridays. We are going to step away from Thoth a little bit and get into finishing up the Hermes. And I love you guys so much. Have a great time. Keep shining and find, I don't know, that action that you can take today for you. All right. Cheers, everybody.